Hey, you all. Settle in now, find a comfortable position, let your body soften against your bed or your pillow, and allow your breathing to slow, to deepen, to become steady and calm. Tonight we journey back through time, across thousands of years, to a land of olive groves and marble temples, to a time when the Mediterranean sun warmed ancient stones and the whispers of history moved like gentle breezes through cypress trees. We will listen to stories of courage and conflict from the world of ancient Greece, but we will hear them not as tales of excitement or tension, but as slow, flowing narratives meant to quiet the mind, to ease the thoughts that swirl like leaves in an evening wind, to guide you gently toward restful sleep. These stories unfold like slow rivers under moonlight, each word a soft ripple, each sentence a gentle current carrying you further from wakefulness, closer to peaceful slumber. There is no need to hold on to any detail, no need to remember names or dates or places. Simply let the words wash over you like warm water, like a soft blanket drawn slowly across your shoulders. Let your eyelids grow heavy, let your muscles relax completely, and listen as we drift into our first story, a tale from the year 490 before the Common Era, a story of the plain of Marathon, where the sea meets the land in gentle curves, and where history moved with the patience of the tides. Imagine now the coastline of Attica, the region surrounding the city of Athens, on a late summer morning in the ninth month of the year, when the air carries the last warmth of the season but hints at the cooler days to come. The sun has not yet reached its full height, but already it paints the Aegean Sea in shades of soft blue and silver, the water moving in slow, rhythmic patterns against the shore, each wave a gentle exhalation, each retreat a quiet inhalation. The beach at Marathon stretches wide and smooth, composed of fine gray sand mixed with tiny shells worn smooth by centuries of tides. Behind the beach rises a gentle plain, covered in late summer grasses that have turned golden in the heat, swaying almost imperceptibly in the sea breeze that carries the scent of salt and dry earth and wild thyme crushed underfoot. Further inland, low hills roll softly toward the horizon, their slopes dotted with gnarled olive trees whose silvery leaves shimmer in the morning light, their branches twisted by years of wind and sun into shapes that seem to hold ancient memories within their wood. The sky above is vast and clear, a dome of pale blue where a few high clouds drift like thoughts passing slowly through a quiet mind. There are no sharp edges here on this plain, no sudden cliffs or jagged rocks, only the gradual meeting of earth and sea and sky in harmonious balance, a landscape that has witnessed countless dawns and dusks, countless seasons turning like pages in a very slow book. On this particular morning, the stillness of the plain is broken not by violence, but by presence. Two armies have gathered here, each occupying a portion of this gentle landscape, each waiting as the light strengthens across the sky. To the north, closer to the hills, camped the forces of the Persian Empire, an empire so vast it stretched from the shores of the Aegean all the way to the distant Indus River, an empire of countless peoples and languages united under one ruler, King Darius I. The Persian camp spreads across the plain like a city temporarily planted upon the earth. Thousands of tents made of felt and leather arranged in orderly rows, their colors muted in the morning light, browns and creams and soft reds. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires, thin gray threads ascending toward the sky, carrying the scent of baking bread and roasting meat, and the distinctive aroma of spices brought from lands far to the east. The Persian soldiers move through their camp with the quiet efficiency of men who have traveled great distances and know the routines of military life. They come from many nations, Persians themselves with their distinctive robes and trousers, Medes with their felt caps, Egyptians with their linen garments, Ionian Greeks who serve their Persian overlords, each group maintaining their own customs even within the larger imperial structure. Their weapons rest against tent poles or lie beside sleeping mats, long spears with iron tips, composite bows made of wood and horn and sinew, short swords curved like the crescent moon. But this morning there is no urgency in their movements, no sense of immediate action. They are waiting, as armies often do, for the day to unfold according to plans made by commanders who study the terrain and consider the positions of their enemies with careful deliberation. Across the plain, to the south near the coastal marshes where reeds grow tall and waterfowl call softly to one another, the Athenian army has taken its position. These are not professional soldiers in the Persian sense, but citizens of Athens, young men and older men who own property in the city and its surrounding countryside, men who in ordinary times would be farmers tending their olive groves and vineyards, or artisans shaping clay or metal in workshops near the agora, or merchants trading goods in the marketplace. They have left their ordinary lives behind for a season to defend their city, answering the call of their generals when word arrived that the Persian fleet had been sighted rounding the Cape of Sunium to the south. The Athenian force numbers perhaps 10,000 hoplites, heavily armed infantrymen who form the backbone of Greek warfare. Each man wears a bronze helmet that covers his cheeks and nose, leaving only eyes and mouth visible, a bronze or linen cuirass to protect his torso, greaves of shaped bronze to shield his shins, and in his left arm he carries a large round shield called an aspes, made of wood covered with bronze, heavy enough to require the support of a leather strap around the forearm. In his right hand he holds a long thrusting spear, its shaft of cornel wood, its point of sharpened iron. They stand now in their ranks, not yet formed into the tight phalanx formation that will define the coming hours, but waiting in loose groups, speaking quietly to neighbors from their own deme, their local village or district. The air among them carries a mixture of emotions, not fear exactly, but awareness, a sober recognition of what awaits them. These are men who have heard stories of the Persian Empire's power, who know that this force before them represents only a portion of the king's might, a reconnaissance in force sent to punish Athens for supporting Ionian Greeks who rebelled against Persian rule years earlier. Yet they also carry within them something new, something fragile but growing in the Athenian soul, the sense of themselves as citizens of a free city, a polis where decisions are made not by a distant king, but in assemblies where free men speak and vote. This idea, still young and untested in the face of imperial power, gives them a resolve that cannot be measured in weapons or numbers alone. Between the two armies lies the plain itself, perhaps 8 stadia across. That is, about 1.5 miles of open ground covered in that golden late summer grass. The grass is dry now, having given up its moisture to the summer sun, and it whispers softly when the breeze moves through it, a sound like distant rain or like pages turning slowly in a great library. Scattered across the plain are occasional stands of trees, oaks with their broad canopies, pines standing straight and dark against the sky, and here and there the silver gleam of an olive grove on slightly higher ground. The land slopes very gently downward from the Persian position toward the marshes where the Athenians wait, a subtle incline that a casual observer might not even notice, but which the generals on both sides have studied carefully, knowing that even such small features of terrain can influence the outcome of battle. The marshes themselves, where the Athenians have placed their left wing, provide natural protection against cavalry attacks. The soft, waterlogged ground would swallow horses and riders alike, making it impossible for the swift Persian horsemen to maneuver effectively. This positioning was not accidental but deliberate, a choice made by the Athenian generals after they arrived at Marathon 2 days earlier and surveyed the ground with experienced eyes. Among these generals was a man named Miltiades, who knew the Persians well, having spent time in the region of the Hellespont where Persian influence was strong, and who understood their tactics and their strengths better than most Greeks did. He had argued forcefully in the war council for meeting the Persians here at Marathon rather than waiting behind the walls of Athens, knowing that to allow the Persian cavalry to operate freely on the plains near the city would be disastrous. His counsel had prevailed, and now 10,000 Athenians and a small contingent of allies from the city of Plataea, perhaps another 1,000 men, waited on this plain, their fate suspended in the morning air like dew waiting to evaporate in the strengthening sun. The sun continues its slow arc across the sky, climbing higher, warming the earth beneath the feet of waiting men. Shadows that were long at dawn have shortened considerably, now lying close to the objects that cast them like faithful companions resting at their feet. The heat of the day begins to build, not yet oppressive but noticeable, causing sweat to form beneath bronze helmets and cuirasses, prompting men to shift their weight from one foot to the other, to adjust straps that have grown uncomfortable. Water skins pass from hand to hand in both camps, the simple act of drinking becoming a small ritual of sustenance and connection. In the Persian camp, officers move among the ranks, their voices calm and measured, reminding men of the empire's greatness, of the rewards that await those who serve the king faithfully. They speak in many languages, their words translated by interpreters who stand ready, their messages adapted to the customs and expectations of each contingent. The Persians are confident, not arrogantly so, but with the quiet assurance of men who serve the greatest power the world has yet known, an empire that has absorbed kingdom after kingdom, that has never yet met a force capable of resisting its will for long. They know the Greeks fight bravely, but they also know that Greek armies are small, divided among many city-states that often quarrel among themselves, lacking the unity and resources of the Persian realm. They expect this battle to follow a familiar pattern. The Greeks will advance in their heavy armor. The Persians will loose arrows from a distance to disrupt their formation. Then the Persian infantry will engage, supported by cavalry sweeping around the flanks, and the outcome will be decided before the afternoon shadows grow long again. But the morning passes and the expected Greek advance does not come. The Athenians remain in their position near the marshes, their formation not yet locked into the tight phalanx that would signal an imminent attack. The Persian commanders grow thoughtful. They have their own concerns this morning, concerns unknown to the Greeks waiting across the plain. During the night, a portion of their force, their cavalry, their most mobile and versatile arm, has been re-embarked onto ships. The reasons for this are debated even by historians who study these events centuries later. Perhaps the Persians intended a two-pronged attack, sending their cavalry by sea around the coast to threaten Athens itself, while the infantry engaged the Greeks at Marathon. Perhaps they sought to find a more suitable landing site with better access to water for their horses. Whatever the reason, as the sun climbs toward noon, the Persian cavalry is absent from the field, their horses no longer tethered at the edges of the camp, their riders not present among the infantry ranks. This absence creates a subtle shift in the balance of power on the plain, a shift that Miltiades and the other Athenian generals have noticed with keen eyes. They see the gaps where horsemen should be standing, they observe the altered dispositions of the Persian infantry, and they recognize an opportunity, a window of time when the Persian force is vulnerable in a way it would not be with its cavalry present to threaten the Greek flanks and rear. The decision to attack must be made by the 10 Athenian generals who share command of the army, each representing one of the 10 tribes into which Athenian citizens are organized. For days they have debated their course of action, some urging caution, others advocating boldness. According to tradition, each general holds the supreme command for one day in rotation, but on this day the polemarch, the war archon whose vote carries special weight, has yielded his authority to Miltiades, recognizing his experience and the urgency of the moment. Still, Miltiades cannot act alone. He must persuade his fellow generals that now is the time to advance across that open plain, to close with the Persians before their cavalry can return or before the psychological advantage of waiting shifts to the invaders. He moves among his colleagues, his voice low but firm, pointing out the absence of Persian horsemen, emphasizing the danger of remaining static while the enemy potentially maneuvers against their city, reminding them that every hour of delay allows Persian confidence to grow while Athenian resolve might waver. He speaks not with fiery rhetoric designed to inflame passion, but with the calm logic of a man who has weighed all factors and reached a conclusion. One by one, the generals give their assent. The decision is made. The Athenians will attack. They will advance across the plain, not at a run, as some later accounts suggest, but at first a steady march that will quicken as they close the distance, preserving their formation while building momentum for the collision to come. The order passes quietly through the ranks. There is no trumpet blast, no dramatic signal that would alert the Persians prematurely. Instead, officers move among their men, speaking in low voices, giving instructions that ripple through the formation like disturbances moving through still water. Shields are adjusted, grips tightened on spear shafts, helmets settled more firmly on heads. The Athenians begin to form their phalanx, that distinctive Greek formation where each man's shield protects not only his own left side, but also the right side of the man standing next to him, creating a wall of bronze and wood that moves as a single entity. The formation is deeper on the wings than in the center, a deliberate tactical choice. The best troops, including the Plataeans on the far left, are positioned on the flanks, while the center, composed of men from two Athenian tribes, is deliberately thinned. This arrangement will have consequences that unfold slowly as the battle progresses, like patterns emerging in sand drawn by receding waves. The phalanx begins to move forward, not with a shout or a roar, but with the soft, rhythmic sound of thousands of feet stepping in unison on the dry grass of the plain. The sound is like distant thunder that never breaks into a storm, like the steady pulse of a great heart beating beneath the earth. Dust rises gently from their passage, catching the sunlight and creating a soft, golden haze around the advancing formation. Across the plain, the Persians observe this movement with professional interest. They have faced Greek hoplites before and know their methods. They watch as the bronze wall advances steadily toward them, maintaining its discipline, its ranks straight, its pace measured. Persian officers issue their own commands. Archers move to the front of their formation, knocking arrows to bowstrings, preparing to loose volleys at the approaching Greeks. Persian infantry, lighter armed than their Greek counterparts, wearing little armor beyond perhaps a wicker shield and a short spear, prepare to receive the shock of the hoplite charge. They have confidence in their numbers and in their tactics, which have served the empire well across many battlefields. They expect the Greeks to absorb their arrow fire, to see gaps open in their ranks, to feel their formation disrupted before contact is even made. They prepare to exploit those disruptions, to flow around the heavy but potentially brittle Greek formation like water finding paths around stones in a stream. The distance between the armies closes slowly, each step bringing the moment of collision nearer. The Greeks continue their steady advance, the dust rising around them, their breathing becoming synchronized with their steps, in and out, a collective rhythm that steadies nerves and focuses minds. They can now see individual faces in the Persian ranks, can make out the colors of their garments, the glint of sunlight on arrowheads and spear points. The Persian archers loose their first volley, a dark cloud rising into the sky, arcing gracefully before descending toward the Greek formation. The arrows strike shields with soft thuds, some glancing off bronze surfaces, others embedding themselves in the wooden cores. A few find gaps in the armor, striking flesh, drawing cries of pain that are quickly swallowed by the larger sounds of the advancing army. But the Greek formation does not waver. The arrows are numerous but lack the penetrating power to break through bronze helmets and cuirasses consistently. The Greeks press forward, their shields raised slightly to deflect the incoming missiles, their eyes fixed on the enemy ahead, their steps unwavering. Another volley follows, and another, each one darkening the sky momentarily before the arrows descend like deadly rain. The Greeks continue advancing, now close enough that they can hear the commands of Persian officers, the twang of bowstrings, the murmur of thousands of voices speaking languages foreign to Greek ears. The distance narrows to 200 paces, then 100, then 50. The Persian archers fall back through gaps in their own infantry lines, their work done for now, making way for the spearmen who will meet the Greek charge head-on. The two lines are now separated by only a few dozen paces, close enough to see the whites of each other's eyes, close enough to smell the sweat and leather and metal that surrounds every soldier on both sides. And in this final moment before contact, the Greek pace quickens. What had been a steady march becomes a jog, then something faster, not quite a run, but a purposeful acceleration that carries the weight of the entire phalanx forward like a wave building toward the shore. The sound of their advance changes, becomes more urgent, the synchronized footfalls creating a rhythm that vibrates through the plain itself. And then contact. The collision of the two lines is not a single event but a series of impacts rippling along the front, like stones dropped at intervals into a still pond. Where Greek shield meets Persian shield, where Greek spear thrust meets Persian spear parry, the sound is a terrible symphony of impact. Wood splintering, bronze ringing against bronze, the grunts of men straining against each other, the cries of those struck down in the first moments of violence. But we will not dwell on the violence itself. Instead, let us observe the battle as if from a great height, as if watching patterns form and dissolve in sand, as if witnessing the slow dance of tides against a shoreline. From this perspective, the battle becomes a study in movement and pressure, in the physics of masses in collision. The Greek center, deliberately thinned, begins to give way under the pressure of the deeper Persian formation opposite it. The Persians push forward here, sensing weakness, their lighter armed troops flowing into the space created as the Greek center bends backward like a bow being drawn. But this yielding is not collapse. It is part of the pattern, part of the design that Miltiades and his fellow generals envisioned when they arranged their forces that morning. While the center yields, the Greek wings, stronger, deeper, composed of the most experienced fighters, hold firm against their Persian opponents. And then they begin to advance more rapidly, their momentum carrying them forward as the center continues its controlled retreat. The result is a transformation of the battle line, a curving inward of the Greek formation that begins to envelop the Persian center. The Persians who have pushed forward into the yielding Greek center suddenly find themselves with enemies not just to their front, but beginning to appear on their flanks as the victorious Greek wings pivot inward. The battle becomes a slow encirclement, like water gradually surrounding a stone placed in a stream. The Persians in the center fight bravely, but they are caught in a trap of geometry and momentum, their numerical advantage neutralized by the tactical arrangement of their enemies. Their formation, which moments before seemed poised for victory in the center, now finds itself compressed, its depth becoming a liability as men in the rear ranks press forward, without realizing that those in front have lost their freedom of movement. The battle continues in this pattern for a time that feels both brief and eternal to those participating, a span of perhaps 30 minutes or an hour, though in the intensity of the moment such measurements lose their meaning. The sun climbs higher in the sky, its light now directly overhead, casting minimal shadows, illuminating the entire plain in even, shadowless brightness. The dust raised by thousands of struggling men hangs in the air like a golden mist, softening edges, muting colors, creating a dreamlike quality to the scene. From our distant perspective, we see the Persian formation gradually lose its coherence, its straight lines dissolving into clusters of men fighting in isolated groups, their coordination broken by the Greek envelopment. The Persian commanders attempt to rally their troops, their voices rising above the din, but the momentum has shifted decisively. The Greek wings continue their inward pressure, meeting at last behind the Persian center, completing the encirclement. What had been a battle between two lines has become a series of smaller engagements within a larger circle of Greek hoplites. And then, as gradually as it began, the organized resistance of the Persian force dissolves. Some units break entirely, their men turning to flee toward their camp near the hills or toward the beach where their ships wait. Others continue fighting in isolated pockets, their courage undimmed even as their tactical situation becomes hopeless. The Greeks press their advantage methodically, not with wild pursuit but with disciplined advance, maintaining their formation even as they push the remnants of the Persian army backward across the plain they had crossed hours earlier in such confident array. The retreat becomes a rout in places, Persian soldiers discarding weapons and armor to run faster, their light clothing offering little protection as they flee across the familiar ground now transformed by defeat. Some find refuge in their camp, where they attempt a last stand behind hastily erected barriers of tents and supply wagons. Others reach the beach and wade into the sea toward their ships, the water closing over their armor, their weapons sinking into the sand as they struggle toward safety. The battle on the plain subsides gradually, like a storm losing its energy, like waves diminishing after a surge against the shore. The sounds of combat, the clash of weapons, the cries of men, the commands of officers, fade slowly, replaced by other sounds. The moans of the wounded, the calls of victors searching for friends among the fallen, the distant cries of birds returning to the plain now that the great disturbance has passed. The dust begins to settle, returning to the earth from which it rose, leaving the grass of Marathon stained in places with darker patches that will take seasons to fade completely. The sun, having reached its zenith, now begins its slow descent toward the western hills, its light taking on a warmer, gentler quality, casting longer shadows that stretch across the battlefield like fingers of twilight reaching toward the sea. The Athenian victory is complete. The Persian force that landed at Marathon has been defeated decisively, its infantry scattered, its camp captured, its threat to Athens neutralized for this season at least. The cost has been paid in lives. 92 Athenians lie dead on the field, their names later inscribed on a monument erected on the plain, each name a story ended too soon, each death a loss felt in households throughout Attica. But against the scale of Persian losses, perhaps 6,400 men according to the historians who recorded these events, the Greek casualties seem miraculously light, a testament to the effectiveness of their tactics and the discipline of their citizen soldiers. As afternoon deepens toward evening, the Athenians tend to their wounded, gather their dead with solemn care, and take possession of the Persian camp with its rich spoils of war tents, weapons, supplies, treasures brought from across the empire to support this expedition. But even as they secure their victory, a new concern arises. Scouts report that the Persian fleet, which had sailed away during the battle carrying the cavalry, is now rounding the coastline, heading not back toward Asia, but toward the Bay of Phaleron near Athens itself. The Persians may yet attempt to strike at the undefended city while its army remains here at Marathon. A decision must be made quickly. The army is tired, having marched to Marathon, fought a battle, and now face the prospect of another march. But there is no alternative. Leaving a small force to guard the wounded and secure the battlefield, the main body of the Athenian army prepares to march back to their city. They cover the distance, 25 miles of rough terrain, in a single afternoon and evening, their exhaustion overcome by the urgency of protecting their homes and families. They arrive at Athens as darkness falls, taking up positions on the heights above the harbor just as the Persian fleet enters the bay. Seeing the Athenian army already in place, ready to defend their city despite the day's exertions, the Persian commanders realize their opportunity has passed. After lingering overnight, their ships sail away toward Asia, carrying the survivors of the Marathon expedition back to the court of King Darius, bearing news of an unexpected defeat at the hands of a small Greek city-state. Night falls fully over Attica. The stars emerge one by one in the clear autumn sky, the same stars that have witnessed countless human dramas across millennia. On the plain of Marathon, the battlefield lies quiet now. The wounded have been carried away, the dead gathered for burial, the spoils removed. Only the earth remains, bearing the subtle scars of the day's events, the trampled grass, the disturbed soil, the faint impressions left by thousands of feet. The sea breeze returns with the coolness of evening, moving across the plain with the same gentle rhythm it held at dawn, carrying away the last traces of battle smoke, cleansing the air with salt and the scent of night-blooming flowers. The marshes at the edge of the plain resume their evening chorus of frogs and insects, their sounds weaving together in patterns as old as the land itself. The moon rises over the eastern hills, its light silvering the sea and casting soft shadows across the battlefield, transforming the site of conflict into a landscape of peace once more. The plain of Marathon sleeps beneath the stars, holding within its soil the memory of this day, a memory that will be honored in songs and stories for generations to come, but which tonight rests quietly, undisturbed except by the wind and the slow turning of the earth toward dawn. And as you listen to this story settling around you like gentle dust, feel your own body growing heavier, more relaxed, your breathing slower and deeper, your thoughts drifting like leaves on a calm pond, moving without urgency, without destination, simply floating on the surface of awareness before slowly sinking into the still waters beneath. The details of the battle fade from importance, leaving only the rhythm of the narrative, the steady pulse of words moving like waves against the shore of consciousness, each one carrying you further from wakefulness, closer to the peaceful realm of sleep. Your muscles release their tension completely, your jaw softens, your shoulders sink into your bed, your entire being surrendering to the gentle gravity of rest. The story continues to unfold in your mind, not as history to be remembered, but as sound to be absorbed, as rhythm to be matched by your slowing heartbeat, as imagery to dissolve into dreams. The plain of Marathon exists now only as a landscape of the imagination, its details blurring at the edges, its colors softening into twilight hues, its sounds fading into the distant murmur of waves on a shore you may never visit except in dreams. And as this first story draws to its close, feel yourself floating on the boundary between waking and sleeping, carried by the current of narrative toward the deeper waters of rest, where battles are forgotten and only peace remains, where the only movement is the slow rise and fall of your own breathing, the only sound the quiet rhythm of your heart, the only landscape the gentle darkness behind your closed eyelids, waiting to receive you completely, to hold you safely through the night, to restore you gradually with the slow magic of sleep that has healed warriors and citizens alike since the days when Greeks and Persians faced each other on plains beneath the same stars that watch over you now. Let go completely now. Surrender to the heaviness in your limbs, to the softness closing around your mind, to the gentle descent into sleep that awaits you like a calm sea ready to receive a weary traveler, carrying you down, down into restorative darkness where no battles are fought, where only peace exists, only stillness, only the deep and healing silence of true repose. As the memory of Marathon settles into the earth like dust returning to stillness, let us drift now to another time, another place, another season in the long history of the Greek world. The year is 480 before the Common Era, 10 years after the battle we have just left behind, and the world has changed in ways both subtle and profound. King Darius of Persia, who sent his expedition to Marathon, has passed from the world, and his son Xerxes now sits upon the throne of an empire that stretches from the Indus River in the east to the Aegean Sea in the west. And Xerxes has made a decision that will echo through the mountains and valleys of Greece, a decision to lead an army of unprecedented size across the Hellespont, across Thrace, down through Macedonia, into the very heart of the Greek peninsula itself. This will not be a reconnaissance in force like the expedition to Marathon. This will be an invasion meant to absorb the Greek city-states into the Persian Empire once and for all, to extinguish their peculiar notion of freedom beneath the weight of imperial order. And as word of this great army's movement spreads through Greece like ripples from a stone dropped in a still pond, the Greeks must decide how to meet this threat, how to defend their narrow land against a force whose numbers seem beyond counting, whose resources appear limitless, whose determination has been hardened by the memory of defeat at Marathon a decade earlier. Imagine now the geography of Greece itself, not the gentle coastal plain of Marathon with its open spaces and gradual slopes, but a land of dramatic contrasts, of mountains rising abruptly from sea level, of narrow passes where the land constricts like a throat tightening, of valleys hidden between towering peaks where the sun reaches the earth only for a few hours each day. In the late summer of this year, as the Persian army advances southward through Thessaly, the Greeks hold a council at the Isthmus of Corinth to determine their strategy. Some advocate withdrawing to the Peloponnese and fortifying the isthmus itself, abandoning central Greece to the invaders. Others argue for making a stand at the Vale of Tempe, a narrow passage between Mount Olympus and Mount Ossa where the Peneus River flows to the sea. But scouts sent north return with troubling news. The Vale of Tempe can be bypassed by mountain paths unknown to Greeks but familiar to the local inhabitants, paths that would allow the Persian army to descend behind any Greek force holding the pass. The council debates through the night, the flickering light of oil lamps casting long shadows across anxious faces, the air thick with the scent of olive oil smoke and the weight of impossible decisions. And from this deliberation emerges a new plan, a different location for making their stand, a place called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, named for the thermal springs that bubble up from the earth near the shoreline, their warm waters steaming gently even in the cool of morning, carrying the faint mineral scent of sulfur that hangs in the air like a ghost of the earth's inner fires. Thermopylae in this time is not the wide coastal plain it would become millennia later through the gradual accumulation of sediment from the Spercheios River. In the 5th century before the Common Era, the coastline here is dramatically different, a narrow passage where the mountains descend almost directly to the sea, leaving only a track wide enough for perhaps 2 chariots to pass abreast at its narrowest point. To the west rise the steep slopes of Mount Kallidromus, covered in dense forests of oak and pine, their branches whispering secrets to one another in the mountain winds. To the east lies the Malian Gulf, its waters a deep blue in the distance but shallowing near shore into gentle waves that lap rhythmically against rocks worn smooth by centuries of tides. Between mountain and sea runs the road from Thessaly to central Greece, a path worn smooth by generations of travelers, merchants, shepherds moving their flocks between summer and winter pastures, pilgrims journeying to distant temples. And at the narrowest point of this passage, where the cliffs come closest to the water's edge, the thermal springs emerge from fissures in the rock, their warm waters flowing in small streams across the path before disappearing into the sea, creating patches of damp earth where unusual plants thrive, their leaves glossy and dark green, their roots drinking the mineral-rich waters that have traveled from deep within the earth. The air here carries multiple scents simultaneously, the salt tang of the sea, the dry dust of the road, the pine resin from the mountains above, and beneath it all the faint, sulphurous breath of the hot springs themselves, a reminder that the earth here is alive with hidden fires. It is to this place that a small Greek force makes its way in mid-August, their footsteps raising small clouds of dust on the dry road, their shadows stretching long before them in the early morning light. They number perhaps 7,000 in total, a fraction of the forces the Greeks might eventually assemble, but sufficient for holding this narrow pass where numbers matter less than courage and position. Among them are Spartans, 300 of them, all full citizens of Sparta. men who have passed through the rigorous training of the agoge and now wear their hair long in the Spartan fashion, their crimson cloaks marking them even among their heavily armed companions. They are led by their king Leonidas, a man in his 50s with the bearing of one who has spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. His face lined not with age alone, but with the weight of responsibility carried across decades of service to his city. With the Spartans come contingents from other Peloponnesian cities, Tegeans, Corinthians, Arcadians, each group maintaining its own formations but united under the overall command of Leonidas. And from central Greece itself come the Phocians and Locrians, men who know this territory intimately, who can point out every goat path winding up the mountain slopes, who understand the rhythms of the sea and the patterns of weather in this narrow passage between land and water. The Greeks arrive at Thermopylae to find the pass empty of Persians. Xerxes' great army is still days away, moving with the deliberate pace of a force so vast it cannot hurry even if it wished to. The Greeks have time to prepare their position, to study the terrain with careful eyes, to make the small adjustments that might mean the difference between holding the pass and being swept aside. They note particularly the narrowest section of the path, where a ruined wall built in some forgotten age still stands in fragments, its stones weathered smooth by wind and rain. Here they decide to make their main stand, reinforcing the ancient wall with fresh stones gathered from the surrounding area, creating a barrier behind which their hoplites can form their phalanx, their shields overlapping, their spears projecting forward like the quills of some great slumbering beast. They position their forces carefully, the Spartans and other Peloponnesians taking the center where the wall stands strongest, the Phocians ascending the mountain slopes to guard against any attempt to outflank the position by the paths that wind upward into the forests. For several days the Greeks work methodically, their movements unhurried but purposeful, the sound of stones being placed against other stones creating a soft percussion beneath the constant whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant rhythm of waves against shore. They draw water from the hot springs for drinking after allowing it to cool, the minerals lending an unusual taste to their cups, a taste that becomes associated in their memories with these final days of preparation. They sleep in shifts beneath the stars, their dreams filled with images of home, olive groves heavy with fruit, the familiar faces of wives and children, the shaded courtyards of their houses in Sparta and Corinth and Tegea, dreams that feel increasingly distant as each day passes, and the knowledge of what awaits them settles deeper into their bones. Meanwhile, to the north, the Persian army continues its inexorable advance. To describe its size is to court disbelief, for the ancient historians speak of numbers so vast they strain credulity. 2 million fighting men, 5 million souls including camp followers and support personnel. Modern scholars suggest more modest figures, perhaps 150,000 combatants, 250,000 souls in total. But even these reduced numbers represent a force unlike any the Greeks have ever faced, an army that moves across the landscape not as a military formation, but as a migration of peoples, a nation in motion carrying its entire way of life with it. Xerxes himself travels in the center of this vast host, seated in a chariot drawn by 8 white horses, his person shaded by a golden parasol held by attendants who walk beside him. He is a young king, not yet 40 years of age, his face smooth shaven in Persian fashion, his robes of purple dyed with the precious extract of murex shells, his wrists heavy with golden bracelets, his authority absolute and unquestioned. Around him moves the apparatus of empire, secretaries recording every order, interpreters standing ready to translate his words into the dozens of languages spoken within his domains, generals from every corner of the known world awaiting his commands. The army that surrounds him is a tapestry of humanity, Persians in their distinctive robes and trousers, Medes with their felt caps, Bactrians wearing garments of brilliant colors, Indians riding chariots drawn by horses whose coats gleam like polished bronze, Ethiopians with their bows of carved horn, Egyptians bearing ancient weapons whose designs have changed little in millennia. They move not as a single entity, but as a collection of peoples bound together by loyalty to the king and the promise of reward, their languages creating a constant murmur like the sound of a distant forest filled with countless species of birds. Their supply train stretches for miles behind them, camels bearing packs of grain and dried fruits, ox carts carrying tents and cooking vessels, herds of cattle and sheep driven alongside the marching columns to provide fresh meat each evening. The dust raised by their passage hangs in the air for hours after they pass, a golden haze that settles slowly upon the landscape they have traversed, coating leaves and stones with a fine powder that catches the light of the setting sun. After days of marching, the Persian vanguard reaches the northern entrance to the Thermopylae Pass. Their scouts ride ahead, returning with reports of Greek forces positioned at the narrowest point, of a rebuilt wall blocking the path, of hoplites standing in disciplined ranks beneath the morning sun. Xerxes receives this news with something approaching amusement. He has heard tales of Greek courage, but he cannot comprehend how so small a force might hope to resist his army. He waits 2 days, allowing his entire force to assemble on the plain north of the pass, giving his men time to rest after their long march, expecting that the Greeks will reconsider their position and withdraw when they witness the true scale of the force arrayed against them. But on the morning of the 3rd day, when Persian scouts report that the Greeks remain in place, their formations unmoved, their wall still standing firm against the mountain and the sea, Xerxes decides to test their resolve with a limited engagement. He orders forward a contingent of Medes and Scythians, reliable infantry but not his elite troops, to advance through the pass and clear the Greeks from their position. He expects this to be a brief action, a demonstration of power that will end with Greek dead littering the narrow path and the survivors fleeing southward toward their homes. The Medes advance into the pass as the sun climbs toward midday, their lighter armor allowing them to move quickly over the uneven ground, their wicker shields held before them, their spears ready. They number perhaps 10,000, a force that would overwhelm most opponents, and they approach with confidence born of countless victories across the empire. But as they enter the narrowest section of the pass, they encounter a formation unlike any they have faced before. The Greek phalanx stands 3 ranks deep behind the rebuilt wall, each hoplite's shield overlapping with his neighbor's, creating a continuous barrier of bronze-faced wood. Their spears, dory, 8 feet long with iron points, project forward in a dense forest of sharpened wood and metal. The Medes attempt to close with the Greeks, but the confined space prevents them from bringing their superior numbers to bear. They can engage only the front ranks of the Greek formation, while their own rear ranks press forward uselessly, creating congestion that hinders rather than helps their efforts. The Greeks fight with disciplined economy of motion, thrusting spears forward in unison, withdrawing them to thrust again, their movements synchronized by years of training and the natural rhythm of men fighting shoulder to shoulder. The Medes fall before this wall of bronze and iron, their lighter armor offering little protection against the heavy thrusting spears of the hoplites. After several hours of fruitless assault, their commanders order a withdrawal, leaving the narrow path littered with their dead and wounded, the stones of the ancient wall spattered with blood that flows in narrow streams toward the sea. Xerxes watches from a vantage point on the hills above, his expression shifting from amusement to irritation as his Medes retreat in disorder. Not wishing to appear indecisive before his vast army, Xerxes immediately orders forward his elite infantry, the Immortals, 10,000 strong, so named because their number is always maintained at exactly 10,000, each fallen soldier replaced immediately so that the unit never appears diminished. These are the finest infantry in the Persian Empire, their armor more substantial than that of the Medes. Their discipline unquestioned, their reputation fearsome across 3 continents. They advance into the pass with precision, their movements fluid and confident, their commander Hydarnes leading them personally. But they encounter the same constraints as the Medes before them: the narrowness of the pass, the strength of the Greek wall, the disciplined formation of the hoplites who stand their ground without flinching. The Immortals fight with greater skill than the Medes, attempting to use their agility to find weaknesses in the Greek line. But the hoplites have anticipated such tactics. When Persian soldiers attempt to close inside the reach of Greek spears, the hoplites drop their spears and draw their short swords, the xiphos, a weapon ideally suited for the close quarters of the phalanx. The fighting becomes a brutal contest of strength and courage at arm's length, bronze against bronze, muscle against muscle, will against will. The Immortals press forward with relentless determination, but the Greeks hold firm, their overlapping shields absorbing blows that would fell isolated warriors, their collective strength magnifying the power of each individual. As afternoon deepens toward evening, the Immortals too are forced to withdraw, their casualties significant, their pride wounded by this unexpected resistance from a force so vastly outnumbered. Xerxes watches their retreat with growing frustration, packing before his golden throne, his attendants keeping careful distance as his mood darkens with the descending sun. That night, as the Persian camp stretches across the plain north of the pass with countless cook fires creating a false dawn beneath the stars, a Greek trader makes his way through the Persian lines requesting an audience with the king. His name is Ephialtes, a local man from the region of Malis, and he brings information that will change the course of the coming days. He knows of a mountain path, a goat track really, that winds up the slopes of Mount Kallidromus and descends behind the Greek position at Thermopylae. The Phocians guard this path, he tells Xerxes, but they are few in number and unprepared for a serious assault. Xerxes receives this man with gratitude, rewarding him immediately with gifts of gold and silver, and summons his commanders to plan an assault for the following day. The strategy is simple in conception. On the next morning, the main Persian force will again assault the Greek position at the narrow pass, fixing their attention and their forces in that location, while simultaneously a contingent of Immortals will follow Ephialtes up the mountain path under cover of darkness, descend behind the Greek lines before dawn, and attack the defenders from the rear. Caught between two forces, the Greeks will have no choice but to break or be destroyed. Xerxes approves the plan immediately, his confidence restored by this unexpected opportunity, and orders preparations to begin at once. Meanwhile, in the Greek camp at the Hot Gates, Leonidas and his commanders hold their own council as night falls. Messengers have arrived from the oracle at Delphi with prophecies that weigh heavily upon the Spartan king's mind. The Pythia spoke of a choice: either Sparta would fall to the Persians, or a Spartan king of the Heracleidae line would perish in defense of his homeland. Leonidas, who has brought only 300 of his royal guard to Thermopylae, leaving the main Spartan army at home observing religious festivals that forbid military action, understands the implication of this prophecy with terrible clarity. He has also received reports from his scouts that the Persian army numbers far beyond initial estimates, that their camp stretches to the horizon in every direction, that their numbers seem to darken the very earth they stand upon. Some of his allies urge withdrawal. Why sacrifice all these men when the pass might be held later at another location, when the full forces of Greece might be assembled to meet the Persians on more favorable terms? But Leonidas has made his decision. He will remain at Thermopylae with his 300 Spartans and any others who choose to stand with them. He gives permission for the other Greek contingents to withdraw under cover of darkness, to carry word southward of what has transpired here, to prepare the defenses of the isthmus and the city of Athens for the invasion that will inevitably follow. Many of the allies depart reluctantly, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they leave brave men to certain death. But others choose to remain, the 700 Thespians under their general Demophilus, the 400 Thebans whose loyalty is questioned but who stand firm nonetheless, perhaps 1,000 Peloponnesians from other cities who cannot bring themselves to abandon their Spartan comrades. Together, they number perhaps 2,000 souls who will face the dawn knowing it may be their last. The night passes slowly over Thermopylae. The Greeks who remain tend to their weapons by the light of small fires, sharpening spear points already sharp, checking the fittings of their shields, adjusting the straps of their helmets with methodical care. There is little conversation among them, only the occasional low murmur of men speaking to close companions, the soft clink of bronze against bronze, the rhythmic sound of whetstones moving across iron edges. Leonidas walks among his men, not speaking at length to any one soldier, but offering a nod here, a touch on the shoulder there, his presence a quiet reassurance that needs no words. He knows these men. Many have trained together since boyhood in the harsh discipline of the Spartan agoge, have hunted together in the forests of Laconia, have shared meals in the public mess halls where conversation was as carefully regulated as every other aspect of their lives. They understand one another without speech, their bonds forged in a crucible of shared hardship that has prepared them for this moment even if they never anticipated its specific form. As the hours pass toward dawn, the Greeks lie down to rest where they stand, their shields beneath their heads serving as pillows, their spears within easy reach, their sleep fitful but real, a soldier's sleep that can be abandoned in an instant at the first sign of danger. The thermal springs continue their gentle steaming in the cool night air, their warmth a small comfort against the chill that descends with darkness, their mineral scent a constant presence in the air like the breath of the sleeping earth itself. To the north, the Persian immortals prepare for their night march. Hydarnes leads them personally, his face set in grim determination after the day's failure. They carry minimal equipment, light shields, short spears, their distinctive quivers of arrows slung across their backs. Ephialtes waits at the edge of the Persian camp, his form barely visible in the starlight, his knowledge of these mountains the key that may unlock the Greek defense. As the moon rises over Mount Kallidromus, casting long shadows down the slopes, the immortals begin their ascent, their movements silent and disciplined, their path illuminated only by the cold light of stars, and the occasional torch carried by Ephialtes to mark particularly treacherous sections of the trail. The path is exactly as the trader described, narrow in places, winding steeply upward through stands of pine and oak, the ground underfoot consisting of loose stones and dry pine needles that shift treacherously beneath sandaled feet. The immortals move with the patience of hunters, their progress slow but steady, their formation stretching into a long column that winds up the mountainside like a serpent climbing toward the sky. Hours pass as they ascend, the temperature dropping with elevation, the air growing cooler and carrying the scent of damp earth and night-blooming flowers unknown to the plains below. They pass the position of the Phocian guards without detection. The Phocians, expecting no attack from this direction, have posted only a light watch, and the Persians move past their position in the deepest part of the night when vigilance naturally wanes. By the time the Phocians realize they have been bypassed, the immortals are already descending the southern slopes of the mountain, the first hints of dawn beginning to lighten the eastern sky over the Malian Gulf. In the Greek camp, the first warning comes not from scouts on the mountain, but from deserters arriving from the Persian camp just before dawn, Greek-speaking men from the city of Trachis who have served reluctantly in Xerxes' army, and now slip away to warn their countrymen of the flanking maneuver underway. Leonidas receives them calmly, asking precise questions about the size and composition of the Persian force on the mountain, the route they are taking, their estimated time of arrival behind the Greek lines. The answers confirm his worst fears. The immortals are already descending the southern slopes. They will reach the rear of the Greek position within the hour. Leonidas calls his remaining commanders together for a final council. There is no debate now, no discussion of alternatives. The choice is simple, to die standing their ground or to die fleeing in disorder. They choose the former. The Greeks prepare for their final stand with the same methodical care they showed the previous day, but now with the knowledge that this preparation serves not tactical advantage, but honor alone. They eat a final meal of bread and cheese and olives, drinking water from the hot springs one last time, the mineral taste now carrying the weight of finality. They don their armor with particular attention to detail, ensuring every strap is secure, every piece of bronze properly positioned, as if preparing for a religious ceremony rather than a battle. Leonidas himself is said to have combed his long hair carefully, a Spartan custom performed before battle, and to have donned his finest armor, the crimson cloak that marks his royal status flowing behind him as he moves among his men for the last time. As the sun breaks over the eastern horizon, painting the peaks of Mount Kallidromus in shades of rose and gold, the main Persian army begins its assault on the narrow pass once more. But this time, there is no hesitation or testing of strength. Xerxes has ordered a full commitment of force, wave after wave of infantry advancing into the confined space, with orders to press forward without regard for casualties. The Greeks meet them with the same disciplined resistance they showed the previous day, their phalanx holding firm against the human tide, their spears thrusting forward in rhythmic unison, their shields absorbing blows that would shatter lesser formations. The fighting is fierce and unrelenting, the narrow path becoming slick with blood that flows toward the sea in crimson rivulets, the air filling with the sounds of combat, the clash of bronze, the grunts of straining men, the cries of the wounded, the commands of officers whose voices grow hoarse with repetition. But even as the Greeks hold against this frontal assault, they are aware of movement behind them. Scouts report the approach of the immortals from the mountain path. The moment of encirclement is at hand. Leonidas makes his final decision. Rather than wait to be crushed between two forces in the confined space of the pass, he orders an advance beyond the protection of the rebuilt wall, into the slightly wider section of the path where his men might maneuver more freely. It is not a retreat but a repositioning, a choice to meet death on terms of their own choosing rather than passively awaiting destruction. The Spartans and their allies surge forward with a final burst of energy, their war cry ringing through the pass for the last time, their formation maintaining its discipline even as they knowingly advance into annihilation. They crash into the Persian front lines with such ferocity that the invaders reel backward momentarily, their ranks disrupted by the unexpected aggression of men they believed cornered and defeated. In this final phase of the battle, the Greeks fight with a terrible freedom, the freedom of those who have accepted death and therefore fear nothing. They abandon defensive caution, fighting with an offensive fury that maximizes the damage they inflict even as their own numbers dwindle rapidly. Leonidas falls early in this final engagement, struck down by Persian spears and arrows, but his men fight on around his body, forming a circle to protect their king's remains as long as possible. One by one, the Spartan royal guard perish. Aristodemus, Stenius, Demas, their names remembered later in Sparta with honor, their bodies piling around their fallen king like leaves gathering around a fallen tree. The Thespians fight with equal determination, their 700 gradually reduced to hundreds, then dozens, then individuals fighting alone but refusing to yield. Even the Thebans, whose loyalty was questioned, reportedly stand their ground until overwhelmed, their sacrifice silencing later accusations of cowardice. The battle ends not with a dramatic climax but with a gradual subsidence, like waves diminishing after a storm. The last Greeks fall where they stand, their weapons broken, their shields splintered, their bodies bearing wounds too numerous to count. The Persians, respecting the courage of their fallen opponents even in victory, part their ranks to allow Xerxes himself to view the aftermath. The king approaches the pile of Greek dead with a mixture of anger and admiration, his gaze lingering on the body of Leonidas. In a rage born of frustration at the casualties his army has suffered, 20,000 Persians reportedly fell in these 3 days of fighting against 2,000 Greeks. He orders the Spartan king's head to be severed, and his body crucified, a dishonor intended to demonstrate the futility of resistance against imperial power. But even as he gives this order, something in Xerxes' demeanor suggests he understands he has witnessed something beyond mere military defeat, a demonstration of human courage that transcends the arithmetic of victory and defeat, a lesson in the power of free men defending their homeland that will echo long after the specifics of this battle are forgotten. As midday approaches, the Persian army secures the pass of Thermopylae completely. The dead are gathered with surprising care, Persian corpses carried north for burial according to their customs, Greek dead collected respectfully, and prepared for funeral rites that will be conducted by local inhabitants after the Persians have passed southward. The rebuilt wall is dismantled stone by stone, the path cleared of bodies and weapons, the thermal springs washing away the blood that has flowed into their waters. By afternoon, the pass is once again traversable, the Persian army beginning its march southward toward the heart of Greece, their path now open to Athens and beyond. But something has changed in the nature of this invasion. The 3 days at Thermopylae have cost Xerxes not merely 20,000 soldiers but something more valuable, time. Those 3 days have allowed the Athenian fleet to prepare for the naval engagement at Artemisium that coincides with the land battle. And more importantly, those 3 days have provided crucial time for the evacuation of Athens itself, for the preparation of defenses at the Isthmus, for the consolidation of Greek resolve that will culminate weeks later at the Battle of Salamis. The sacrifice at Thermopylae becomes not merely a heroic defeat, but a strategic delay that alters the course of the war, a stone dropped in the pond of history, whose ripples extend far beyond the immediate outcome of the battle itself. Evening falls over Thermopylae. The Persian army has moved on, leaving behind only a small garrison to guard the pass and tend to the dead. The thermal springs continue their gentle steaming, their waters gradually cleansing the stones of blood, their mineral scent slowly replacing the coppery smell of battle. The wind returns to the pass, moving between mountain and sea with its ancient rhythm, carrying away the last traces of smoke from funeral pyres, bringing instead the scent of pine from the upper slopes and salt from the Gulf. The stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, the same stars that witnessed the battle hours earlier, their light unchanged by human drama, their patterns indifferent to victory or defeat. On the slopes of Mount Kallidromus, the Phocian guards who failed to prevent the flanking maneuver descend cautiously to view the aftermath, their faces etched with shame and grief, their knowledge of these mountains now forever associated with betrayal and loss. They begin the somber work of identifying the Greek dead, searching for familiar faces among the fallen, preparing bodies for the funeral rites that will honor their sacrifice. Through the night and into the following days, local inhabitants, the Malians who live in villages near the pass, perform the work of burial with solemn care. They gather the Greek dead, Spartan and Thespian and Theban alike, and inter them in collective graves marked by simple mounds of earth and stone. Over one such mound, they erect a monument bearing an inscription that will become famous across the Greek world, words composed by the poet Simonides that capture the essence of what transpired here. Go tell the Spartans, passerby, that here obedient to their commands we lie. These words carry no boast of victory, no enumeration of enemy dead, only a quiet statement of duty fulfilled, of orders obeyed even unto death. The monument stands not as a celebration of triumph, but as a testament to resolve, a marker of the boundary beyond which free men refuse to retreat. A permanent reminder that some things hold value beyond survival itself. Weeks later, after the Persian invasion has been turned back at Salamis and Plataea, After Xerxes has retreated to Asia with the remnants of his army, Spartans return to Thermopylae to recover the bones of their king and his guard. They conduct proper funeral rites according to Spartan custom, their grief tempered by pride in the manner of their king's death. Leonidas receives a hero's burial in Sparta itself, his memory honored in annual festivals for centuries to come. But the pass of Thermopylae itself remains largely undisturbed, its monuments gradually weathering under sun and rain, its thermal springs continuing their eternal flow, its narrow path once again serving travelers and shepherds who pass through with little thought of the drama enacted here. The earth slowly reclaims the battlefield. The trampled grass regrows. The blood-soaked soil nourishes new plants. The stones of the rebuilt wall become scattered and indistinguishable from natural rock formations. Within a generation, only the monuments and the memories preserved in song and story mark this place as exceptional. And as centuries pass into millennia, as the Roman Empire rises and falls, as Byzantine monks build chapels on the slopes of Mount Kalidramas, as Ottoman soldiers march through the pass on campaigns of their own, as modern highways are constructed along routes that follow the ancient path, the memory of Thermopylae endures not in the physical landscape, which changes beyond recognition as sediment from the Spercheios River gradually fills the gulf, transforming the narrow pass into a wide coastal plain. But in the realm of human imagination, the story of 300 Spartans and their allies holding the pass against impossible odds becomes a touchstone for discussions of courage, sacrifice, and the defense of freedom against overwhelming force. Poets compose verses about the hot gates, philosophers reflect on the meaning of the Spartan's choice, artists depict the final stand in paintings and sculptures that capture not the violence of battle but the dignity of resolve. The specific details fade, the exact number of Persians, the precise sequence of tactical maneuvers, the names of all but a few participants, but the essence remains, distilled into a pure narrative of human courage facing certain defeat with unwavering resolve. Tonight, as you listen to this story settling around you like the gentle mist rising from Thermopylae's hot springs, feel the weight of history softening into dream, the sharp edges of battle blurring into peaceful imagery, the tension of conflict dissolving into the deep relaxation of sleep. The narrow pass between mountain and sea becomes in your mind not a site of death, but a landscape of rest, a place where warm waters flow gently over smooth stones, where pine trees whisper softly in the mountain breeze, where the rhythm of waves against shore creates a lullaby older than human memory. The figures of Leonidas and his 300 gradually lose their definition, becoming silhouettes against the setting sun, then shadows merging with twilight, then finally dissolving entirely into the darkness behind your closed eyelids. Their sacrifice requires no active remembrance from you tonight, only the gentle acknowledgement that courage exists in the world, that resolve has meaning, that some stand firm so others may live freely. But these thoughts need not occupy your waking mind. Let them drift away like leaves carried downstream, their significance felt rather than analyzed, their memory honored by the peace they helped make possible. Feel your breathing slowing now, matching the rhythm of waves on that distant shore, in and out, each exhalation releasing tension, each inhalation drawing in calm. Your body grows heavier against your bed, your limbs softening, your muscles releasing their hold on the day's concerns. The story of Thermopylae becomes not history to be remembered but sound to be absorbed, not narrative to be followed but rhythm to be matched by your slowing heartbeat. The images it evokes, the mountain slopes, the thermal springs, the narrow path between land and sea, transform gradually into dreamscapes, their details softening at the edges, their colors deepening into twilight hues, their forms becoming fluid and peaceful. The hot springs become pools of liquid moonlight. The mountain slopes transform into gentle hills covered in silver grass. The narrow pass widens into a valley of rest where no conflict exists, where only peace remains. As this second story draws to its close, Feel yourself floating on the boundary between waking and sleeping, carried by the current of narrative toward the deeper waters of rest where battles are forgotten and only tranquility endures. Your thoughts drift without destination, without urgency, like clouds moving slowly across a moonlit sky. Your awareness narrows to the simple sensations of breath and heartbeat, the soft pressure of your body against your bed, the gentle darkness behind your eyelids waiting to receive you completely. The world of ancient Greece recedes into dream, its battles concluded, its heroes at rest, its landscapes returning to the eternal rhythms of nature. The turning of seasons, the rising and setting of stars, the slow, patient work of earth and water reshaping the land across millennia. And you too may rest now, your own struggles set aside for these hours of night, your own burdens released into the care of darkness, your spirit cradled in the same peace that eventually settled over the pass of Thermopylae after the last echoes of battle faded into silence. Sleep comes now not as an absence but as a presence, a gentle force surrounding you, supporting you, restoring you gradually with its slow magic. Surrender to it completely. Let go of all remaining tension. Allow yourself to sink into the deep healing waters of slumber where no battles are fought, where only stillness exists, only peace, only the profound and restorative silence that has cradled warriors and citizens alike since the days when Spartans stood their ground at the hot gates, and the stars witnessed their courage without judgment, without preference, with only the ancient light that continues to shine upon us all tonight as you drift finally, completely, peacefully into sleep.